Yo, what's good? Welcome to Countercurrents. This is your host, Petey Steele.
And Elena Torres. I'm back, baby. And today, we've got an amazing guest. Please welcome the very funny Allen Strickland Williams.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for doing this.
Of course.
So, you've been headlining Draft House all weekend here in D.C. How'd the show's been going?
Been going great. This is a great club. I'm really happy to be here. I was just talking to Miranda about how there's just like not a bad seat in the house and it's intimate, and so it doesn't need to be like a huge, like I'm just very. It's always nice when you can just have like you don't have to. Sometimes some places have to be absolutely packed for it to work.
Yeah.
And this is one of those places where it's like the laughter really carries. So it's been good. It's been really fun.
That's awesome. I can't help but notice, what are these things called?
Bolo tie.
Bolo tie?
Yeah,
is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Are you from somewhere where that's a thing, or is that just a style choice that you made? Or
I'm from Bolo. No, it's I think they're big in like the Southwest, which I'm in LA. I guess technically is the Southwest, but I got it in Arizona or New Mexico or something, and it's just easier than doing a real tie.
For
sure.
It
still looks kind of classy. And
yeah.
Especially with the long hair. I feel like it's kind of like a thing.
Yeah.
Is it your trademark thing, like every night at Bolo?
Not a Bolo. I do try to dress a little nicer.
Yeah.
Especially at a show that with a paying crowd, like such as this. But I packed one tie and I packed a Bolo and I started to work on the tie today and I was like, I don't want to tie a tie. I just want to fucking throw this on.
Yeah.
Right.
Hell yeah, turquoise too.
Yeah.
Has
oh, pop.
Yeah, exactly. I like it. Color pop. Because, I don't know, we've talked a lot on this podcast about how presentation is really important on stage.
I believe in that. I'm a huge believer in that.
And having a look, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if nothing else, it doesn't necessarily have to be a suit and a tie, but just having something memorable.
Something that kind of matches with your voice, too, I think is pretty important. And so, a lot of the stuff I talk about is sort of like party, like, stuff. So I feel like this look is kind of like appropriate for it.
Right.
Did you used to go to parties wearing bolos and blazers?
Oh yeah. I mean, I guess I've been cultivating this style for my whole life, really.
So how long ago did you start comedy? And did you start in LA?
I started in LA. I started in 2010. I'd done a little bit of comedy before then. I was in a sketch comedy group in college. And every once in a while, there'd be like these little sort of stand-up type shows.
And did you go to college in L.A. also?
I went to college in upstate New York.
Okay.
But then I graduated and moved to L.A. And eventually, I didn't really know what to do. I wanted to write. And someone told me, I forget who it was, but someone was like, hey, no one's going to hire you as a writer right now because you don't have any samples and no one knows who you are. Do stand-up because you'll learn how to write a joke and you'll learn what your voice is through that and then move on to writing. And I've done writing things as well, but really that did just set me down the path of like, I started doing it and I was, not good, but good enough to keep trying.
Right.
And then, if you have enough of that going for a couple of years, then you're like, oh, I have like 15 minutes of good shit or whatever.
Right.
So I started out there in LA.
And something that we've asked some people that have started in New York or LA, not that many people on this podcast have actually started in LA. What was it like? Because from my impression from going and just doing stand-up in LA, it's like the hardest city in the country to get time.
It's pretty rough. Like the story I kind of tell is I was on this show. It's called What's Up, Tiger Lily. It was a show that Maria Bamford started and then handed off to someone else. And it was like the best show in town at the time. And it was my first time being booked on it. My first big booking at a show that wasn't like just in a coffee shop,
Right.
And not that there's anything wrong with that. But I
no, we all start doing those shows.
I did. I had this show and I was on it, and all my friends came, and I was wearing my little suit and tie, and I got bumped by Howard Kramer. I don't know if you know who that is, So I got bumped by Howard Kramer. While Howard Kramer's on stage, Mark Maron shows up. I get bumped by Mark Maron. Then, while Mark Maron's on stage, Louis C.K. shows up. I get bumped by Louis C.K.
Wow.
Louis C.K. does like 45 minutes, and then I went up. And thankfully,
you followed Louis C.K.?
Yeah, I followed all that, and the whole time I'm like, I'm gonna puke my guts out. Like I'm getting more and more nervous. It's like a cartoon, like, and then Bill Cosby. Like it's just like they're bringing people back from the dead, like, to fucking go up.
Richard Pryor.
I'm like, fuck. but it went really well. Like it was a great,
Wow.
I like said the right thing and dealt with it the right way and just did my and also after someone does 45 minutes, I did a fast little set and got out of there. But that's pretty much what it's like. You're on. There's huge names on these shows with you,
Right.
and it's intimidating. But I do think there's some truth to rising to the occasion, and
Totally.
you're like on the shoulders of giants. I'm being a little too philosophical right now, but
No, that's real.
But you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
it kind of forces you. It's like, fuck, I gotta get like good at this.
Yeah.
So I sometimes have the jealousy of like, I like to go to Denver a lot. Denver's probably the place I've performed the most outside of Los Angeles. And sometimes I'm envious of the fact that like people get to really cultivate without that sort of pressure and everything.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
this is the way I did it. So it's like,
Right.
whatever. And then also I'm like, it does look like I've seen very few cases of people moving to LA. I don't really know the situation in New York, but of people moving to LA and immediately starting to get booked in town and find work and et cetera, et cetera. Like a lot of times it seems like you have to take a little bit of a step back, especially if you are very prominent in another
Absolutely.
city. So I'm like, well, I might never be hot shit in LA, but I'm fairly well known. I think I can say that.
All the
Right.
critics love you in DC.
And so it's like it's one of those things where I'm like, well, this was just the way it worked out for me. Like I'm not gonna worry about it too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so is that how you started sort of getting opportunities in LA? Is that bigger names saw you and then started helping you with other shows?
It's more of the fact that you meet. I feel like the thing about stand-up, even though it's a pretty isolated thing, and when you're doing it, unless you're a duo act, you're on stage by yourself. But I do think that there's a very strong sense of community, even if it's a fucked up one sometimes. But
for sure.
that's what I when I sort of started meeting my friends and my people and
Right.
people, I'm like, oh, we should write together. We should work on stuff together.
Sure.
And that led to maybe making some sketches, and that led to selling a script, and then, or you run a show with someone and then you make contacts through that. It's like, I feel like that's sort of, it's more of like your peers more than anything else that kind of like help you and guide you and give you inspiration too, as cheesy as that sounds.
Do you feel like you've had with those peers sort of like one event that was your sort of break in stand-up? I mean, nobody really feels, unless you're Louis C.K., like you've had a break, but
Yeah.
what was a career-changing moment
I mean,
for you?
it's not. It definitely was not what the level of doing late night used to be. But doing Conan for the
Right.
first time was really, really. I mean, I've been very blessed, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've had. The half hour was amazing too. But doing that first Conan legitimizes you. That it's the first thing where it's like, oh, now it's not just a hobby.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, I got to really try to do this and try to do more of this.
Right.
That sort of, I think, was the big change. At least, I don't know. And I did kind of start to get booked a lot more right after that. Like that opened up the club world. The club world, I maybe done like featuring maybe once or twice at clubs before that. Then I got the opportunity to start featuring and headlining more like that year and the year after. So that I think was probably externally and internally the biggest, like, hey, we've entered new territory.
Stoke the flame.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes I think it interesting how, anytime I'll get like a new little accolade or whatever, you become a club feature, or you go out of town, or people pay you money, whatever the fuck. You're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be the thing that changes, my thing.
Never.
And it never happens like that, and then it gets even harder.
Yeah, I feel like I've had to learn that too, and even with money too, it's like you'll get a big check or whatever, and it's like that money's not going to last forever.
That's right.
And so it's like I always just try to be like grateful, and I'm not trying to look down on anything. I'm extremely grateful and extremely happy for the opportunities I've been given, but it does get to the point sometimes where I'm like, this could all go away like that. Like anything could happen. Enjoy it. Don't try. You're doing it. There is no like one day. I'm sure most people these days don't feel like one thing altered their entire maybe that you used to do Carson, you go over to the couch and it's like bam, you're a star. But I just don't think that that's how it works anymore. I feel like you got to do a ton of little things, and then people kind of start to know who you are.
Yeah.
And then one day you wake up and you're like, oh shit, I have my own show, or like whatever, I'm in a movie, and then it kind of maybe that. I feel like the things that really make or break you, you're already at the high level. It's just you're like in the Judd Apatow movie now, or you're whatever.
It's like a confluence of a lot of things.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
You feel like you're on a new plane, and then what have you. That's great. So, wait, did you say you're originally from where?
I grew up in Florida.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was born in Miami. Where are you from?
I'm from outside Jacksonville.
Okay.
And I lived there high school, and then left for college, and immediately moved to LA after college.
Wow.
Nice.
It's kind of an interesting trajectory. So what from Florida makes you say, I'm going to go freeze my dick off in upstate New York?
Well,
you go from sunny to SUNY. What the fuck?
Very good. New Paltz reference. I went, I wish that I had applied west instead of north to college because the weather kicked my fucking ass. But my whole MO was I was like, I'm getting into the school that's the furthest away from Florida. Like that was my thing. And I didn't apply to anything west of Mississippi because I didn't really know that world.
Right.
But that was it's like when they have to get back to the Earth by slingshotting around the moon.
Yes.
I had to go to upstate New York to get to LA.
Armageddon. That's where that's from. Yeah.
That's great. So you got up there. Now, did you do any comedy upstate New York?
I was in a sketch group. I was in a pretty college level sketch group, but we had fun, and it did. I wrote a lot, and it taught me a little bit about being on stage. But then it wasn't until LA that I really started doing stand up and doing open mics every night and stuff like that.
And you still. Do you value writing the same way that you did when you moved and you wanted to do it, or now you much more into like a lot of stand-ups are like stand-up purists. You know what I mean?
I've always viewed myself as a writer, and I feel like a lot of people still do. That actually used to be my big, I don't know if you'd call it a complaint, but maybe a critique in my early years was they're like, you look like a writer who's doing, and I think I've broken away from that. I think I've gotten better at being a performer and everything, but in my mind, I'm still waiting for that writing job to just like put me in a room and let me write jokes all day.
Right.
But that being said, you have a show like the one I just had here, and I'm like, fuck, stand-up's fun. But the problem
that
is,
was packed.
Oh, it was great. It was great. It was a great crowd. Everything worked. Like, it was just like one of those great nights. And then, but they're not all like that.
Right. Right. That's one thing where I think that it's hard for stand-up comedians to have that much ego because when your ego gets inflated, no matter who you are, there's just some moment where the audience is kind of like, fuck you, that isn't funny.
You can't win them all,
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I kind of like, I do writing. I'm actually working on a show right now, and then I have a pretty healthy stand-up schedule, and it's really nice because I don't really get to be too sick of either of them.
That's great.
There's always something else to focus on, and if one thing's annoying me, I can dive more into the other thing. And I've kind of like, I wouldn't mind having that sort of dynamic for my whole career, really.
Sure. Right.
But yeah, and the people that do become the pure stand-ups, they are those stand-up purists. I don't think I'm really exactly have that mentality.
Yeah, because some people you ask them like, oh, you got a TV credit, that's great for your stand-up career. Whereas other people, they're like, oh, I got a TV credit, so now I can do more TV. But
or get a writing job or whatever.
Exactly. So this is something that we ask people, and obviously the answer is both. But what do you think is more important?
Neither. No,
or neither. What do you think is more important to make a great stand-up comedian? Just performance or writing? Like if you get up and your writing is great, but the delivery is okay, are you a better stand-up if you do that? Or if your performance is amazing, but your writing just isn't there?
I think that it's just the doing it. So I guess the answer is actually, for me, I'd say performance, because that is right. You're writing on stage. Like at least like even I'm a pretty, it took me a year to look up off my note card at the crowd. Like it took me 6 months to take the microphone out of the stand. Like, it took a long way for me to get to the point where I feel like a pretty competent performer. But that is writing. Like, the way that you perform things, the way that you, what syllable you stress, what you put at the beginning of the end, like, you can do that stuff on stage too. And so I feel like it's like, you just do it over and over and over again. And even if you never feel, you know,
I know what you mean. Like, sometimes I'll feel like I'm narrating a book. Like, it goes on autopilot or something, and I'm doing a voiceover, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, and I'll like leave my body sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I love it. It's
Or you're like thinking like 3 or 4 jokes ahead.
Yeah.
Like, you're telling one thing and you're like, okay, how is this going to lead into the next one?
And then I'm like, oh, like, there's something I did on stage today that I was like, I was like, oh, please remember that. Like, write it down right when you get off stage so that you can remember to do it next time and next time. And so I was like, and I even said it after the joke. He goes like, oh, I never done that before. That like, and it really worked. And I'm like, okay, I wasn't saying that to call it out. I was saying that to like, remember it, stupid.
Yeah. No, you get in like a fugue state.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like you're in Nam or something.
Yeah.
As long as I'm leaving a body count, fuck it. But I got to say, I mean, you definitely look like a writer. Like, you look like you eat healthy and take regular walks. Like, even the physical stature. It's a compliment. I wish I could do those habits. And
I've tried to get Petey to do those habits.
yeah, I'm a piece of shit like that. But
don't worry, looks can be deceiving.
yeah. So, Alan, what do you got coming up?
Let's see. I've got dates in Portland at the Funhouse Lounge. I'm doing March 20th and March 21st. Besides that, I'm working on this show, but it's still very much in development. So it's.
I was going to say, do we get to know what it is or anything about it?
I can definitely tell you what it is. It's called Unmatched. It's about a world where a dating app is the most powerful company in the world. They match you with your perfect soulmate, and it's about how the algorithm doesn't work for 3% of the population who is doing like non-monogamy and polyamory and basically just fucking a lot, trying to make it through this world that's built entirely for monogamy. Okay. So that's the show, and we're trying to get them to order more scripts and then eventually to make it. But that's sort of working on that, and then stand-up dates and everything's on AllenStricklandWilliams.com, and I'm totally Allen on all the Twitter and Facebook.
That was going to be our next question. You beat us to totally Allen on
totally
on
Allen.
everything.
ALLEN. I post about everything there constantly to the point where you'll be mad you followed me. But but yeah, if you want to know, that's where it is.
And we've got some upcoming dates here at the Draft House Comedy Theater. Adam Caton Holland from the Grawlix, Tragedy Plus Time, and Conan.
Adam's great.
Yeah, fantastic. On February 14th, so take your girl. And hey, you know what? You got a chance, 3 of you, to take your date or respective other to a Alan Caton, Adam Caton.
Three name attack.
Yeah, 3-name attack. And just follow us on Countercurrents and Twitter,
like something, comment, especially if your comments like, "Oh my God, Elena, you look so great after having a baby." Then you'll definitely get to
and you do. And
thank you.
Also, just come to the Draft House. This venue is fucking great.
It is.
It's a good club. Like
you heard it here first, guys.
Everyone's been really, and someone I met last night said that like they've just been coming pretty much at least once or twice a month for a while just to see whoever's in town because they just trust it at this point. So
that's awesome.
They're the best.
That's awesome. Well, if you're listening to this, that person is a fan. You can just comment on our shit and you can come for free. You don't
Any
even have to
praise from someone with 3 names is superlative.
Exactly.
And at the Arlington Cinema Draft House, the same weekend, the 14th and 15th, live from Fairly Normal Podcast, NBC, and After Lately, we got the main man, Josh Wolf, opening 7:30 and 10 the 14th, 7 and 9:30 on the 15th. And again, same deal applies for liking our fan pages and having a chance to win some Valentine's Day tickets, you and your boo. And follow me, Petey Steele, Steelborn DC on Instagram and Twitter, and Elena.
You can follow me at Elena Blondita on Instagram. That's where I mostly live. The baby content is minimal. Don't worry. It's mostly comedy. You can follow me, Elena Torres, and everything else on Facebook and Twitter. It's just Elena Torres and Elena Blondita on Instagram.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Alan.
Thanks for having me.
joining
Yeah.
us, and we'll
Thanks
catch
for
you
doing
next
this.
time.
Bye,
Peace.
everybody.
Bye.